Hey everybody, this is Brinna.
And this is Kirsten.
And we are Riding in Cars with
Theo Students.
We're driving around and discussing our thoughts on the Bible, and we have a lot of them.
Pop culture,
Political climates,
racial issues,
gender topics. Sometimes we'll have special guests with us, but always happy.
We are students at Drew Theological School.
Join us for conversations along the ride.
Today we're going to talk about the book of Revelation a little bit, and more specifically the Revelation chapter 2, verses 26, 27, and kind of the shenanigans that go along with that sometimes.
Lots of shenanigans.
Lots of shenanigans. And the interpretations that are out there in the world these days, and kind of our feelings about that. So Kirsten's going to read it for you all, and then we'll a little chit chat.
We have the Jewish Annotated New Testament, NRSV. Shout out to Drew Theo. Revelation chapter 2, verses 26 through 29 out of the NRSV. To everyone who conquers and continues to do my works to the end, I will give authority over the nations, to rule them with an iron rod, as when clay pots are shattered, even as I also received authority from my Father. To the one who conquers, I will also give the morning star. Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches.
So I'm doing this project for Politics of Biblical Interpretation, another class of mine where we have to think of an issue or a current problem in our society, and look at how the Bible is being used and how text is being used to either justify it or kind of talk about it in a way, and what's being said about what interpretations are out there about the issue. So I kind of went back and forth a little bit about what I wanted to do, and I settled on kind of looking at violence, and more specifically gun violence in our country, and what is being said about gun violence, about what the Bible is being used to talk about gun violence, and kind of talk a little bit about that. So in my research, I found that people were using Revelation 2:27 to justify the use of military-grade weapons, and AR-15s in particular, as a justification for civilian possession of AR-15s. So that's how we kind of got here. And gun violence is something that is close to my heart and Kirsten's as well.
So I came across this Twitter thread the other day by @CandyCornball, which is a name. She was talking about Revelation, and she said, every so often I read Revelation and I want to ask John, bruh, who's your dealer? And I'm like, for real.
I so relate with
because this is so trippy. Like, the whole book is weird. She goes on to say in another tweet in her thread, to be completely fair though, I've been reading Revelation a lot lately. I know we're not supposed to read that book, but it's very fascinating and low-key very appealing to me. So she says we're not supposed to read this book, which I haven't ever heard before, because it's been read somewhat regularly in my personal historical context, as we so often say. But I hadn't ever heard, as I'm learning more about the Bible, that it's actually a combination of two genres, apocalyptic and prophecy. And so apocalyptic literature is defined as disclosure of heavenly secrets, and prophecy is defined as divine intentions, which means there's a lot of crap going on.
A lot of crap. So there's a lot of debate over the authorship of the book of Revelation, and talking about where it came from, who wrote it, and all that. And a lot of times it's kind of settled that the name of the person who wrote it is John. Is kind of widely accepted.
John of the island of Patmos.
Yeah, John of Patmos.
Hanging on the island.
But some people say that it is the same John as the Apostle John, which just isn't widely accepted anymore. Greek scholars have looked at the Greek in the book of Revelation. It doesn't line up with the Greek. So the the writing style and the use of language is widely different. So scholars are pretty certain that it's just not the same John.
Not the same John. A lot of John.
Yeah.
Not all the same.
And the timelines don't add up, and it's just a whole lot of not adding up.
It doesn't fit together. So out of the verses that we read, Revelation 2:27 is the one that we are really focusing on today. To recap, it says that we're to rule or shepherd them with an iron rod as when clay pots are shattered. And that is almost a direct quotation of Psalm 2:9, which says, "You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel." So for both of those, I don't really think that they're talking about guns.
Right.
At all.
And one of the things that we found was the Greek translation for rule used in this text literally stands for, or is a translation of the word to shepherd. And I really feel like shepherding and ruling have two very different meanings.
Not the same.
So as much as when you read this text on the surface, it, like, part of me thinks that maybe, like, I see where they're going. Like, I see where they're getting their motive from. But I don't, like, when you look beyond the words and look between the lines, that's not what they're saying.
Like, literally. OMG, you guys. That's not what I said. Mug of the day. Shout out to Kathy.
So when I was working on this project for my other class, and then now this project as well, this episode as well, I came across an article from Reuters of a church in Newfoundland, Pennsylvania.
It's about 90-ish miles from here.
Yeah. And this church had a blessing service to the whole congregation, and there were hundreds of people there.
250 couples, actually.
Yeah. That kind of like renewed their vows with their AR-15s. And they took communion, and they had white, all of them had white on, and we have a
Yeah, so to reference the article, it says there were 250 couples with marital blessings alongside blessing of the guns. The women were in white, men were in dark suits, so it's like there was a dress code for this event. The church officials wore pink and white, and then there were crowns made out of bullets.
Yeah, everyone was wearing crowns, some were made out of bullets, and some, like, it was just very odd, and they took communion.
So we have this dude who, you know, casually wearing a crown made out of bullets, but not casual. And if you look closer, he is taking communion while this picture is being taken.
Yes. And, like, they're in this rural, suburban-ish area in Pennsylvania, having this blessing service for these guns. And all the neighboring schools, out of fear and like common sense, closed down because of this service and the ridiculousness of what they were doing.
People were told not to arm or load their guns, and so supposedly they all came without any ammunition other than, I suppose, what was
on their heads.
And also they said that it was supposedly disconnected to the recent school shootings, but honestly, with everything that's been happening, is this not insensitive?
This also happened 2 weeks after the Parkland shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. So this happened on February 28th. So I can't really separate the two. I'm having a hard time believing that the two are not related.
So with all of this discussion, we were thinking about the fact that people have suggested that teachers should be armed due to recent school shootings and other mass shooting events. And honestly, because both of us worked in education, we are completely against this for the safety of ourselves as educators, but also for the safety of our students.
Yeah, so I was, before coming to seminary, I was a preschool teacher working with a few different age groups, but mostly with toddlers, and in a public school setting. And it's just, it dumbfounds me that people would ask teachers teachers or force teachers to be armed in a society where teachers already do so much for our children and are asked to do way above and beyond what they've been trained for. And the thought of having a gun with me to protect myself or the children seems incredibly idiotic and dangerous.
To conclude our conversation on Revelation, I would like to take a note from a book by Bob Goff in which he says, "I used to think blank, but now I know blank."
So I used to think that the Bible could be used to kind of tell you whatever you wanted to hear. But what I know now and think now after especially after reading this text and kind of studying this, is I still believe that. But the historical context of all of these texts are so important, and I'm learning that more and more. And even a really trippy, confusing book like the Book of Revelation has some historical context, even though it's a little weird. It can't be used, or it should not be used to condone the violence that we're seeing and the possession of these guns that we're seeing.
Thanks for hanging out with us today on Riding in Cars with Theo Students as we discuss Revelation and gun violence.
I also love, side note, P.S., I love how our first episode, we are talking about Revelation. So the first should be last, and the last should be first. So
# eschatology and all that jazz.
Yes. Have a great day, guys.